I first discovered you on YouTube, and I'm a martial artist. So I've been in martial arts for over 30 years. And at every clip on your YouTube video, you always write, discover who you are. What does that mean to you?
Oh, that's a great question to lead off with. I mean, martial arts it's a voyage of self-discovery. And there's nothing quite like getting immediate biofeedback for your theories on what would work and what doesn't. And, there's nothing quite like immediate consequences. So it really shows you how you act under pressure, how far you're willing to go to achieve your goals, and ultimately how you act when, you know, the chips are down. Can you just like take the bad day? Can you eat the pain? Can you bear it and bear that kind of like temporary but tough circumstance? And I think it that kind of like resistance training method in our lives toughens us up for the outside world and also makes us more sensitive to when people are giving us resistance and how to blend against their energy.
Yeah, you know what I love about martial arts, Roy? Some of the kindest, some of the most compassionate, some of the most benevolent people I have ever met in my life are trained killers.
Yeah.
I have friends of mine that have fought MMA, but they are some of the kindest, gentle people you would ever meet. And I'm sure, the same with yourself and your students. You've obviously trained so many different people, and it changes lives, doesn't it? It's changed your life. Martial arts has changed my life for sure. But in what ways has martial arts changed your life?
So many innumerable ways, but I mean there's different let's start at the beginning. When I was 16, started training judo in Japan. It gave me
Wow.
an identity, right? And that was a channel where I could get, it was frustrating initially, in Japan. I didn't speak the language that well. I was sent there as an exchange student, and I thought, I'll learn how to fight. I loved what they could do. Like, I couldn't believe that even though I was trying really hard, my judo captain could throw me over and over again. I couldn't do anything about it. So I realized, man, this is whatever this is, I want a piece of it.
Yes.
And so, as a teenager, a lot of my friends played hockey or were involved in athletics in other ways. And for me, I ended up being a martial artist. I also played the piano, but it's funny, the kind of martial arts personality ended up winning out in the end. And there's something about having, I call it the constant companion.
Mm.
It's there with you. I did judo in high school, and then I got into Aikido, and then I got into Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and I'm in college. Got my first job. Jiu-Jitsu's still with me. Martial
Yes.
arts is still with me. Eventually I decided to quit my job because the opportunity to teach this incredible art was available. So I said, oh yeah, this now it's, even though I didn't intend to ever become a professional martial artist, it's the constant companion that sticks with you through, you know, your evolution in education. You're in all different body shapes. I was super skinny. Now I've gained a bunch of weight and muscle over the years.
Yeah, you look like
It
you packed on a bit
hardens
of
you.
muscle, Roy.
Oh yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. And and there's also something about the confidence that you feel it giving you. It's not just you wake up one day, but you start getting a little bit more confident. Maybe you're a little too confident, like at blue belt, right? And you're like, oh no, I hope someone starts something in the parking lot, right?
Yeah.
But eventually you realize, man, you could really hurt somebody pretty easily. And you can also get hurt. Like no fight is
Yeah.
guaranteed. Like
Yeah.
something could go wrong. We've all lost matches where it's like something didn't work out the way you wanted it to, and then you're in a vulnerable position, and it was over, and you're like, shoot, they could just, things don't always go your way. So it
Yes.
introduces a level of confidence and humility at the same time.
That's so true. It's interesting, Roy. I had a professional mixed martial artist on my podcast. He went viral for a video where he intervened in a street fight. This is over here in Australia. So these two guys were beating on another guy, just stomping on him.
Hmm.
The MMA fighter, his name's Victor. He walked in and intervened. Then these two guys have now started him,
Yeah.
and he's had to defend himself. And when I was talking to him on the podcast, it really kind of just shows the raw reality of violence. And violence is terrifying. You know, you and I are both martial artists. We've been fighting for a long time. We love it. It's fun. But there is that part that we know that when, pardon my French, when shit hits the fan, it is terrifying. And Victor was breaking it down, Roy. He was talking about how he had to, one, choose the correct skill.
Mm.
Because unfortunately, there's been many instances where professional fighters have gotten into an altercation. They've hit the guy's gone down, hit his head on concrete, and it is absolutely devastating. And we know firsthand that when a knockout happens and you hit your head on the concrete, the amount of brain trauma that happens and the bleeding that happens in the brain, there's no coming back from that. It is devastating. But do you teach your students about self defense and how to avoid a confrontation? Because learning how to fight is amazing, but there's a lot of social cues and situational awareness and certain self defense techniques that you can also implement, especially if someone's aggressive towards you. Do you teach your students this stuff?
I tend not to. I tend to kind of give my students a level of freedom in their presentation of the art. So I say that my jujitsu is kind of the middle way. It can be applied toward self-defense, toward no gi, toward, so it's not too gi specific. It's not no gi specific. It's nothing. It's, it's kind of a well-rounded middle ground where you can branch out if you would like
Yeah.
to. And I think, a lot of my uh, affiliates and affiliate academies are martial artists with diverse backgrounds. Some are high level Krav Maga guys. Some people have a Taekwondo background, even a ninjutsu background, or they were,
Wow.
or one was a professional MMA guy, So I leave it up to them. I kind of give them my system is more of a framework that my instructor gave based on positional escapes, learning submissions, chaining them together, perfecting the physics of pressure and precision in your technique, and then eventually learning how to teach the technique. So those are kind of like the belt levels and the skill development going through.
Yeah.
And over the
Yes.
years, I've learned a lot of different patterns. I started in more of the traditional martial arts with, well, Judo, Aikido, Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, lots of weapons defenses in the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu.
Mm.
It was never my favorite thing, but it illustrated, it kind of showed me that that is important for coming up with ideas of how to get off the line of attack, the vector of attack, how to protect your center line, even how to use distraction to take their mind for a second so that you can move. So it's not just move and move. You can get them one move behind. And so there's a lot of, I look at some of the Gracie Jiu Jitsu self defense stuff, and I think it's good. It reminds me very much of some of the Japanese self defense stuff as well,
Yes.
and some of the kata that Kodokan Judo. I was recently in Japan with a tour, Musashi experience. So it was a breathwork and jujitsu
Wow.
tour in Japan, 10 days,
That would have been
fantastic.
fantastic.
It was
Yeah.
really fantastic. I grabbed this hat while I was there, and I have to say, going to the Kodokan was a career highlight of mine. But they really preserve not only the principles of, this conglomeration of jujutsu schools that Kano did. He synthesized them and preserved them, many of them through kata. So I think kata and a lot of self-defense base techniques are good, but at a certain level, I feel like that stuff kind of goes out the window,
Yeah.
and it's just improvised, highly leveraged mechanics that you can spontaneously generate.
Yes.
But that's at a high level. That's like, brown black belt, where you're just like, you're going to do just enough for the situation. And you can moderate it, just like your friend had to kind of choose. It's not every, some people you shove into the wall, some people you hit, some people you knee and then toss them on the ground. It's like you have to, your friend is skilled, so he has the option. Some people only know one thing, like eyes, right? It's great that your friend had that scalability in his ability.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It's fascinating your journey, Roy, because you mentioned you started in judo, but you also did Aikido as well. And I need to commend you as well, Roy. There was a video you shot with Budo Jake, and one of the techniques you showed was Nikio, which is the wrist lock where the
Yeah,
wrist turns out like that. I hit
absolutely.
that all the time from half guard, Roy. All the time. Every
Oh,
single time I will get that, and I do it exactly like how you showed in the demo with the thumb and the middle
yeah,
finger. You grab
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
wrist and you get it down like this, and the wrist is like in that gooseneck kind of. I hit it all the time, Roy. I need to thank you for that.
Oh God, my pleasure. I'm so glad you got some mileage out of it.
I did.
It's high percentage for me too because people don't expect it,
They
right?
don't. No.
And the unguarded gate is the easiest to attack.
Yeah,
Right.
that's so true. And it's such a painful wrist lock as well. It's
Oh
super,
yeah.
super painful.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah. And they're resisting something else, so they kind of feed into that into upper arm position, and it's amazing. All of these things work, right? Whether it's Japanese jiu-jitsu, if the leverage is adequate, you can make it work. The craftsmanship of the jiu-jitsu game is like optimizing everything, optimizing your leverage, optimizing the timing so that it
Yeah.
feels kind of magical. So it's kind of a sense of joy, like even having a technique hit on you, like you get foot swept really well and you're like, that was amazing,
Yeah.
amazing, you know?
Did you find judo hard, Roy? Because I'm a jiu-jitsu black belt and I'm just dabbling in judo now. Super technical. And my coach is a jiu-jitsu black belt and he's a judo black belt. And I'm grading for my orange belt in September. And there's 8 throws I need to know, but it's so technical. Did you struggle with judo or did you pick it up quite
Well,
easily?
it depends. It depends. Like because I was trained in Japan with the high school Japanese team, we trained. I didn't know any different, but it was hard.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, it was hard because they had me do ukemi. They had to special order my uniform because I was taller. So we did ukemi for 6 weeks
Wow.
before I ever did any throws.
Oh my God.
I had bruises on my back, like on each shoulder, because I was doing, but they taught me, and I learned the ukemi so well that it saved me many, many, many times over the course of my career.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that I had that base. And then when I was actually able to spar, like my team captain Ichikawa, he just tossed me over and over again with Uchimata. And other people worked me as well. And I was like, I don't know, it was awesome. So I just felt like I had all this teenage angst and I wanted to channel it and I wanted to learn how to fight. And these guys could definitely beat me up. So I was just like, what do I have to do? And the English instruction wasn't there, but monkey see, monkey do. I'm seeing the movements and I'm just imitating the movements. So it was very pure in a way.
Yes.
And and also in the way I was graded, I had to do shiai or competitions every month. So and beat a certain number of people at that rank, and then you go to the next queue and you work your way up. So when I was doing that, really you could just hone in instead of doing like broadening your technical base. I could just hone in on a couple of things, like sasai, uchimata,
Yep.
and maybe or a harai goshi into kesagatame,
Oh,
and that was it. That was like, it was like Uchimata, or get him down in Kesa, or just, find a way to win like that too. So it was more simplified for me, more of timing and movement based, imitating the movements and eventually mastering a couple of movements. Now I'm older. I mean, I was 16 then. So now I'm older and my Uchimata is not quite the same as it was. Like, the back is it's a little creaky some days.
Yeah.
If I'm warmed up, many things are possible, but if you're just
Yeah.
coming in cold, it's different. So, I'm trying to still study and do different things with judo. When you get
Yeah.
at the Kodokan, there was a really amazing foot sweep setup that we took a private with a
Oh
like a
wow. What was the
rokudan,
foot sweep?
well, it was the way he set it up. I mean, he did kind of like uh I want to say like a Kosoto gake, like just nipping the outside of the heel, which makes him take a big
Wow.
step back and then withdraw his foot.
Yep.
So he makes him step back with a push. The guy step, and then the other foot is following very smooth, and you can just add to that right then. First stumble right into it, and he was, the uke was very light and a black belt, so his ukemi was like flawless, and
Wow.
it was really good. I'm stealing it. There's many setups, but I was like, oh, that was particularly good.
Yeah. Roy, there's a famous video. I don't know the actual year, but there's a very elderly gentleman, a Japanese gentleman, demonstrating some techniques, some judo techniques where his students are trying to throw him
Yeah,
and he's
yeah,
able to counter that with his balance. Do you know the video I'm talking about?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Mifune.
That's the one.
Yeah,
Yeah. I watched that video and he looks very, he looks like he's in his 80s or 90s. He looks very old. But you watch it and it's just a beautiful display of martial art technique. It is amazing. Everyone needs to watch that video.
absolutely, absolutely. And it's like he knows what the entries are, right? So he's able to like anticipate, reposition himself, drop his hips just a little bit. It's very subtle.
It's
There's a lot
beautiful.
of subtle body work going on in that, where, and that's the thing about jujitsu. Like, you can see it, but you don't know how it really feels. A
Yep.
lot of times, like, you cannot imagine the pressure that people are feeling. Like, you don't know what it's like to be under Roger Gracie's mount. You see people and you're like, man, I just like buck as hard as I could. No, you're not.
Yeah.
That's not happening. You're not feeling what they're feeling. The claustrophobic,
Have you ever
like,
rolled with Hodger Gracie, Roy?
I've not. I've not. I would love to.
Yep.
I'd love to. We teach up at Grapplers Retreat. I would love to cross paths with them. Um, at some point.
Yeah. He's
And
amazing.
his first black belt, Nick Gregoriadis, is the one who led the Musashi experience.
Yes, yeah, yeah. I have Nick on Instagram. He follows me, and I follow him too. And Nick's a very well-known martial artist. And you've done some seminars with him, haven't you?
But yeah, absolutely. We hosted him down in Southern California at CVBJJ,
Yep.
and we've taught a few times together, including at the first Grapplers Retreat. Now that's a really beautiful little retreat center built specifically for grappling in Northern California, Mendocino.
Wow.
So they have a whole bunch of, you know, great instructors that go out there, and then I think it's limited to 16 people. You go, some people have individual cabins, everyone gets their own room, and everyone eats, everything included. So you're on the same property, eating the meals together. The training sessions, one gi, one no gi per day, and it's great, and it's just like another amazing way that jujitsu brings people together, right? It doesn't have anything to do with a tournament. Class is fun, tournaments are fun, but these traincations are also pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah. There's been a lot of retreats happening, Roy. I don't know if you've ever been to Australia, but I'm not bragging, but we have some of the best beaches in the world over here. And there's a grapplers retreat that happens in the Whitsundays, Airlie Beach, and the water out there is like what you see in the Maldives and Tahiti. It's that blue, crystal
Mm.
clear water. Can you
Mm.
imagine grappling in a place like that? I mean, that would just be amazing, you know?
Oh yeah. Oh
Yeah.
no, it is. I've not been to Australia yet. I was hoping to make it this year, but I don't think that's happening. But man, it's I've heard so many good things about that country. And my father actually, he was a huge fan of Australia. He would go every other year for about I think 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he explored every part of Australia and New Zealand as well. He also liked New Zealand.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
feel like the day I head over to Australia will be I'll be reconnecting.
You'll love it, Roy. I had Eli Knight on the podcast. So he's a jiu-jitsu black belt under
Oh yeah.
Hoist, and I was talking to Eli, and he's the same. He wants to come to Australia, and you're very well known in Australia, Roy, in the martial arts community over here, and so is Eli. I'm sure there might be potential for seminars and things like that. It'd be fantastic to have you guys over here.
Yeah, it will definitely be good. I do have an affiliate over there in Sydney, but I haven't personally been over there. He usually comes over to the States. So
Yeah.
but I just had that big trip and I'm thinking, oh, do I really want to do another big international trip?
Yeah.
But it was good. That's just how I'm feeling now coming off of off of one trip. But yeah, I look forward to exploring it. I'm glad that it's grown so much. I mean, jujitsu has exploded around the world,
It's amazing.
and yeah, and it's bringing people together. I mean, in an era where we're kind of a lot of people are divided and separated by screens, it's good old fashioned contact.
Yeah, it's amazing, Roy. You know what I love about jujitsu, Roy, is when you're grappling with a high level black belt, you're not thinking about anything else. You're not thinking about the stresses of work. You're not thinking about, some sort of argument that you had with your spouse, or, you're annoyed with your kids. Everything is put on hold because you're in the moment. It's that mindfulness activity. You're too busy worried about getting choked and strangled or having your arm dislocated or something like that. It's a mindfulness activity. When life gets hard, Roy, what do you give? What's some advice that you give to people that aren't in martial arts, but what would be some advice to people that you could sort of share if they are going through a difficult period?
Oh, I mean, there's so many lessons from jujitsu that can apply to people in the outside world that, I think most of the time people want to, if they're in any kind of conflict, they want to react immediately and with counterforce. They want to oppose immediately. But you can, if you could enter into their mind an alternate path, like, okay, maybe just sidestep. So let that person go by. Like you're greeting them, but then you step out of the way. It doesn't mean you're retreating. Or maybe you retreat once, retreat twice. Even in the judo lesson that they gave at the Kodokan, they were like, yeah, you don't retreat 3 times. You back up. They'll catch you by the third, but you can back up 1, 2, and then turn.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of there's a lot of realization that there are many options, more options that you might originally think in a conflict situation. There's many ways to get the arm lock, many entries. Right. So just opening up someone's mind to the idea that there might be another possibility and a way to handle a situation that doesn't involve direct conflict, I think that can often be useful. And you just kind of maybe just give them an alternative. It doesn't even have to be the greatest thing, but just introducing the possibility that there could be another or creative solution.
Yeah.
That I think that's really that can be useful for people. And also sometimes it's not your time. Yeah, just because you want something doesn't mean you can get it. Jujitsu shows you that with escapes. You kind of protect yourself and then you wait. You have to wait for your moment. It's not just when you want it because you want it now.
Yeah.
There's definitely a timing in life, and to tell people to just, hey, hunker down, sit with that feeling. You're not comfortable now, but your moment is coming, rather than just reacting. I think
Yes.
that can be valuable for people that don't train martial arts.
Yes. Yeah. And you mentioned so you started judo at 16, and when did you start Aikido, Roy? What age were you?
So I was 19 when I started doing Aikido. And then I trained very kind of intensely for about 2 years. And then I decided to take to the next level and then move into a dojo under an Aikido and Japanese Jiu-Jitsu master. That was in Monterey, California. So I moved into the dojo when I was 21.
Yep.
And then after about a year and a half of getting beaten up at the school, I was like, oh, I should go back to, I should go back to college maybe.
What were you
And so I
studying?
kept,
What,
yeah.
what I was,
And then I kept training while I went to community college and then eventually, University of California, San Diego. And I just kept continuously training through that whole time. I got into BJJ the first year after I moved to California. So I was living in this Japanese jiu-jitsu instructor's dojo. And after maybe 6 months, um, he allowed me to train in Santa Cruz under my first teacher, Claudio França, Brazilian champion, he was kind of like staking his claim in the Santa Cruz region. Ralph Gracie was just above him in kind of San Francisco area, Concord, I believe. Maybe not Concord, but in the San Francisco Bay Area. And there were just a couple of Brazilian guys that were staking their claim. And I felt privileged to be able to train with a real Brazilian instructor and athlete because he was Pan Am champion. I mean, he looked it. He was like strong, sinewy, no fat, just like, and not like, not too muscular, but just like, oh, this guy watches what he eats. You roll with him, and he felt like really, and he could tap everybody, which was kind of the metric at that time. Are you
yeah.
really good at it? Do you just, because a lot of people in that era, after Hoist won, and they're like, oh, I'm a blue belt, I'm a teacher, but this guy was a real black belt,
Yep.
and could really overcome the size and strength disparity that his students presented to him because he had to fight some monsters. And those guys turned out to be monsters in their own way. uh, you know, going up the ranks and earning their black belts under him. He had a good competition team.
Yeah. What was your first introduction like to Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, Roy? I sure remember my first day. What was yours like? Mine was very humbling.
Oh, it depends. I mean, the first day I went to a real like Claudio school, it was humbling. I got tapped. I don't remember the specifics of that day, but uh, I got introduced watching Hoist win UFC 2. And there, I had some martial arts friends, but none of us we didn't know like groundwork like that. I could recognize a few things from judo, but it felt like it was different enough. And so when I went back to Alaska, I was doing Aikido, but then I kind of answered an online ad on some martial arts forum. I'm looking for a training partner in Anchorage, Alaska. So I met up with this guy, and he was kind of wild. He was like a blue belt under, I think he had gotten his blue belt from some other blue belt who was like, "Oh, you're just as good as me, so here's your blue belt." And he used to wrestle, and it was just wild. He would just like wrestle you 100% and then try to just choke you from the back. And it was like that was his two moves. And but I was like, I want to learn this stuff, so I'm willing to put up with anything. So I did, and we would just go super hard. And there was no other. And now I realize why no other training partners would last with him.
Yeah.
But at that time, so that was like my first introduction to someone who is just moderately skilled. I would wrestle with him a few years later, and it wasn't even. I felt bad. It was so bad. It was so bad. Because he couldn't. He was like so out of breath after 1 minute. He tried to kill me, and then we couldn't continue because he was And you think, oh, it'd be so great to, show him how good I am now. And it was so utterly disappointing because he didn't even have a chance to feel the skill.
Yeah.
And I mean, so there were some kind of like rough introductions. And apparently when Claudio came to Northern California, they said there was blood on the mat every time. These
Wow.
guys, they were just, it was like it wasn't quite MMA, but it was the guys that would do MMA and wanted to do MMA would go straight to Jiu-Jitsu, because they're like, oh, that's what's winning. I'll do that. So it was just a little closer to real fighting or MMA. The attitude, the roughness. Guys would not even let me. One guy, I was like, dude, just let me drill the technique. He's like, no, no, because this is what it's like in real life. And I was like, oh my God. Now our training methodology is so sophisticated compared to back then.
Yep.
People understand like, oh, really a functional warm up. They understand, even this, the CLA kind of the ecological approach, like, oh, you can have specific sparring with specific goals, and that can be more beneficial than just rolling 100%. You know, there's enough experience now. I knew when I was doing it back then that I was like, this is not optimal. Like, this is not the best training method. But, you know, it made you tough.
Yeah, it's interesting, Roy. Reflecting on my first introduction to BJJ, I got my ass handed to me by a girl. She must have only been about 45, 50 kilos. So in pounds, I think that's probably like 115,
100, yeah, 15.
15
Yeah.
pounds or something like that. I'm just trying to work out the math with because you guys use pounds over
Yeah,
there in
yeah.
America.
Yeah, for sure.
And anyone with a brain could kind of know if someone's scooching around to get your back, that doesn't feel good. Even if you don't have any grappling experience, someone that's getting
Yeah.
your back. And I kind of I had a little bit of grappling experience, Roy, and I just had her in some sort of Kezakatami, very
Yeah.
poorly a Kezakatami headlock. And I could
Yeah.
just, and meanwhile, Roy, like I'm getting tired. Like it's been about 2, 3 minutes of wrestling and she's starting to pop her head out. She starts to scooch to my back. She gets both her hooks in seatbelt position. She grabs the inside of my collar and just bow and arrow chokes me. And I went home that day and I was just devastated, Roy. It was just a huge, rude awakening that someone smaller, someone weaker could do that to me. It was the most humbling experience of my life.
There's nothing quite like having that humbling experience. And I felt it in Japan when I was doing judo. I definitely underestimated a guy when they took me to like the local, kind of Budokan to get some additional sparring. And I remember this thin little guy was like, "Oh, let's spar," and I thought, "Oh, I got him," and he freaking worked me. He would like call out the technique and then do it, and he was having such a good time throwing me over and over again. And I was just like, oh, I totally underestimated him. So,
Yeah.
and to your point about getting worked by a girl, I remember as a blue belt, legit tapped by this female in a triangle. She was not messing around and it was sharp and tight. And
Yeah.
I was like, you gain so much respect for the art when something like that happens to you. No, you don't witness it, it happens to you. Despite your best efforts. I mean, those are and that's one thing about the ecological method where it's like that I agree with. Um, Not that it came from there, but the little discoveries you make on your own, sometimes good, sometimes bad, are the ones that last longest. Yes, it's good to have guidance. And that's why you have to spar a lot. You have to be in many, many different kinds of situations to be able to figure stuff out, little pockets where you can work your arm in or they respond in this way. There's nothing quite like uh, you know finding something out, discovering something, and then working it into your game. Just like we all watch instructionals, but unless you experiment and find it out for yourself, it doesn't sink in as deeply.
Yeah. What has martial arts taught you about ego and humility, Roy?
Oh, so everything. It's taught me everything about ego and humility. Ego, it's okay to have it, but it's there. It's like you can't be a slave to it. You need just enough ego to not step in front of a bus, as they say in Zen. Like that's all you need. And humility and respect go hand in hand. Respect for other people. When you lose respect for other people, you lose your humility. And I think it's important to respect everyone on the mat, even a white belt. Even they could have you in a position. I remember I gave a private lesson one time, and I took this guy's bag. We're just playful. We're just and he was brand new, and somehow he caught my toe with his leg and kind of gave me a heel hook from the back, as if it's like if you cross your feet
Mm.
from the back, and he caught me, and I had to tap out because he just caught me, and he didn't even know what he was doing, but he just caught me, and I was like, oh my god, that was it can happen to anyone.
Yep.
And you need those lessons. It's not like, oh, I'm a fourth degree black belt, I could never get caught. No, you're never the best, and you never stop paying your dues. And martial arts, it just reminds you of it. If you're really training, if you're doing the real stuff, like, you're reminded of that constantly.
Yep. That's so true, Roy. Yep. One thing as well, Roy, is your school is known for very structured, hard, and rigorous gradings. And I watched you do your fourth degree on YouTube, and what a remarkable feat that was. What a remarkable display of technique and years of training. But what was the physical and mental preparation like going in to grade for your fourth degree? Because you're under Roy Harris, and he's a well-known martial artist, and I can imagine this would have been the hardest grading you've ever done.
There's definitely some mental work that goes into an event like that. So I appreciate the kind words. I mean, it's a culmination. It's a culmination of 30 years of training. From Japan to California to all over the world. My own techniques, the techniques that I had to teach to students. It's like that's what came out of me. It's totally spontaneous. I have zero idea of what he's going to ask. I have no idea. So it's real. And I think that vulnerability of keeping it real, not everything's perfect, is what allows people to be kind of entertained and attracted to that kind of content, that kind of storytelling.
Yep.
Now, when it came to the night before, I was not in like the strongest place mentally, because I had been training uh, really hard, and I felt pretty good physically, like my cardio. But I had some people were coming into town. I also had an affiliate retreat that weekend, so I'm juggling all these things. And and then, and somebody said something that like I was like, oh, I can't believe they said that. Don't they know? And I was just like not in the right I was not in a strong, stable space the night before. So when I went into that, I was at like 80%, 85%. I wasn't like at 100%. But you know what? That's how life is. You're not going to be at 100%. You go into any kind of professional fight, you're not going to be at 100%. The rare camp you are, something might be off if everything is just so perfect. So, hey, it's dealing with the imperfection of it all.
Yes.
And so, I knew the thing is, I knew it was going to be hard. I know it's like, you cannot imagine the pressure. Very few people will ever understand what that felt like. It's meant to punish you.
It looked
It's meant
brutal.
and
Yeah.
it's not like, and I give my students a little bit of it. I might give them like 20 seconds of it. And you can hear them like, or whatever, they moan involuntarily, but I would never put them through. I mean, the extended time. But that's what he wanted to do, and if that's what he wants to do, then that's totally fine. I just knew that, and it wasn't, in a way, they get shorter and shorter. Like my original black belt exam was long, 3.5 hours. Had teaching examples. I had to spar, specific sparring, tons of stuff.
Was this for your jiu-jitsu black belt, Roy?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Under Mr. Harris in San Diego at his academy.
Okay. Yes.
So he asked me to choose 3 training partners. I chose some tough guys. Some guys went with like smaller, lighter people, but I chose like the people I normally trained with, tough dudes, and that definitely made it harder. And after that, for my second degree, I was kind of riding high because I had the academy in Oregon, and I hadn't rolled with a lot of people at my level in a while, and I had not been, excuse me, I just had not been training as hard as I really should have, and I didn't warm up. I didn't warm up at all. I thought, oh no, I'll just kick it off and it'll flow. And no, that was a serious mistake, because your gas tank, when you're cold and someone's going live, I mean, your gas tank gets depleted. Immediately, like 30% of it is gone, because you're like, oh, and then by the time you're like caught up, your heart was too inelastic. You didn't give it a chance to warm up, and so your performance is going to be off. So I really suffered during my second degree. For
Yeah.
Yeah, so then for the third degree, I was like, that will not happen again. I went to the gym before. He was teaching a seminar. I went to the gym before, got on the bike, you know, did that, was in much better condition for the third degree. And then the fourth degree, I'd been training a ton
Yeah.
and I was back to training with very high level people at CVBJJ. I'm really blessed to have many great high level training partners, and I can do whatever I want there. Like, I want a light day, I want a heavy day. If I'm in town, I'll teach. That it's really an amazing environment, and so I felt like I was as prepared as I could be. But mentally, it was tough. The Garden of Gethsemane. You're going to face something really terrible the next day, and you have to go. You have to go. You got to do it. There's no way you can avoid it. So you
Yeah.
know it, it's kind of good to get tested, because most people don't get tested like that after like high school or maybe college athletics. Like, they don't do anything really hard, and it's nice to give yourself an ego check now and then.
I agree, Roy. I think anything that you do in life is that's challenging and difficult just has such a profound effect on your mental outlook. And I think I was listening to David Goggins. He was talking about hardening the mind. Doing something that's difficult and very demanding physically and mentally. It just helps you push to that next level. And I lift weights, not just in martial arts, but I also go to the gym. And when you're under a grueling bar and you're pushing that last rep out, you're struggling, you don't think you can get it out, but then you do, and you rack it. How good you feel! You just feel amazing. But why did your instructor, Professor Roy Harris, structure such hard and difficult gradings? Because it's very, very different how most academies do belt promotions.
it, you are 100% correct. He did it. I think it started, well, excuse me, he wanted his students to have a high level of functional, repeatable skill sets. He wanted them, he's always been ahead of his time, so far ahead that he's like maybe a little too far. you know he was into leg locks and heel hooks like in the early days
Yeah.
of the 2000s, and you know pressure and cooking people, and just the whole thing. I mean, he had one of the first no-gi academies, and most of the training I did was actually no-gi at his academy, which
Wow.
I found really refreshing.
Wow.
It wasn't really a rash guard, it was more like t-shirt and shorts kind of thing. But he said, yeah, this is how people dress in Southern California. And so it was such a and especially coming from a Japanese jiu-jitsu, very traditional environment, it just was refreshing to go to the Harris Academy and just train, just do stuff, no excess formality, no crazy costumes. It's just, all right, let's do this. So now when he started training people abroad, this is really kind of the genesis of his tests, because
Mm.
he would be teaching. He would taught in Poland very early on, um, all around Europe, and he didn't have the last name of Gracie, but he was good and he knew how to deliver, especially for seminars. And so people would come to him asking about, hey, can I get my blue belt under you? And a lot of them were people that he didn't know, had no connection to. They would just come to the seminar and ask to get, because they didn't have anyone to grade them. So he kind of developed what I made into blue belt requirements,
Yep.
an emphasis on positional escape, so mount escapes, side mount escapes, and he included headlock escapes at that
Yep.
early stage, and then you learn the basic submissions, chokes from bottom, chokes from top, arm locks from bottom, arm locks from top, some leg locks, a couple guard passes, some sweeps, and we're there. And you don't need to be an expert at applying the submissions. You just need to know how to do the mechanics, how to, because you'll get better later. You just need to have an awareness of what they are.
Yes.
But building those foundational movements with the upa, with shrimping, really kind of mastering your body and understanding how to overcome the friction of you and the ground. I think that emphasizing that was really beautiful and brilliant.
Yeah. Because Roy was part of the Dirty Dozen. Is that correct, Roy? He was one of the non-Westerners to receive a jiu-jitsu black belt. Is that correct?
He is right in the mix. Some
Right.
people say yes, he was like 11th or 12th. Some people say no, he was 13th, 14th. But he's pretty unattached to whether he was in the Dirty Dozen or not. But
Yep.
he was definitely one of the early American black belts, and with his JKD background, kind of he was able to organize it in a different way than the Gracies. They have their own educational method, which is beautiful and effective. But he decided to organize it in a different way. And now I can definitely see and understand his methodology. And I have just adopted that framework for my own people. I have a framework, not a syllabus.
Mm.
So I tell people that it's like scaffolding and you fill it in with your own techniques. And this has allowed for, if you look at, for example, the black belt demonstrations, I don't teach, you know, after I sold the academy in 2008, like I've just done, I just have affiliates and I travel, and I realize that, I want my jujitsu lineage to be more open source. And even if you're well-rounded and have a really well-rounded game, you're still limited and you can't teach it all. So you got to have those open doors so that people can bring their own stuff, and the technical palette can expand. I feel that's important, and I'm very happy with how that has turned out, because it's not just, if you want to know what I would do for a black belt exam, like look at Purple Belt Requirements 2.0, where I designed my own little combinations that kind of tip a hat to judo, wrestling, some other stuff, things that I feel are practical, that I really like. But it's not just like my stuff in my syllabus. I really want people to continue to bring new stuff in and move with their own, they have their own movement mastery patterns.
Yeah. Yeah. How do your students respond, Roy, to the intense pressure of your gradings that you conduct?
Usually they want to do it.
Mm.
Now it's an option. With all of one of the greatest things my instructor gave me was creative freedom. So I could set up my academy however I wanted. I could do whatever. Um, and I feel that you know, I want people to just follow their own vision, and I can give them a pathway, excuse me, to fulfill that vision. So they don't have to do, if they just want to receive the belt when I feel they're ready, I'm totally okay with that. And occasionally you have law enforcement or someone who's like, I don't really feel comfortable being recorded. I don't want to do that. Other people say, I've dreamed of that. I saw that 10 years ago. I dreamed of doing that. I want to do that. And they're into it. And some affiliates record all of those demonstrations and they have their own little record. Other people do not. Some people do the belt demonstrations. Most of my affiliates, at least for blue belt, and that ensures a very uniform level of skill. When they follow the blue belt requirements, positional escapes, all that stuff. But when it comes to the elite ranks, people going for black belt, most of the time they want to do it. It's not a requirement. I'll give them the belt otherwise. But they want to, and they're focused, and they're working out, and they're designing the combinations, and they're sending me updates through video. Like, what do you think of this? How's this working out? I'm like, okay, that's good. Think about adding this or whatever. I might consult, but ultimately, this is their expression.
Mm.
Like, and they like discover who you are. They're discovering who they are, their preferences, their, things that they use a lot in their game and things that they would like to use more of. I encourage them to use both when designing.
Yes. And what do you look for in a student who's ready to level up beyond their technical ability? What are some of the things that you look for where you think, okay, it's time to grade?
You know, mo- for most, I'm not really grading people that I don't have these days I'm just basically grading affiliates. And maybe I'll be there because they need to promote somebody to black belt or a high rank. So I'll support them in that. Um, but yeah, there is like a question of character. I feel martial arts and jujitsu, whether it's Brazilian jiu-jitsu or judo or whatever it is, it's a moral and physical development framework. It's a system of education that's beyond, it's not just athletics and it's not just technique. It's more than that. So you have to represent that. You have to, I need to be like, okay, no, he's one of my black belts. Even if he's not a killer on the mat, you can make up for that with knowledge, attention, you know, uh, service to the art. Are you able to bring other people up that are good and maybe, can exceed your capacity, that kind of thing. So I stopped thinking of it as just a technical indication of expertise and think of it more like a calendar, but still you need to deserve that reminder of how long you've been training.
Yeah.
And so if you're not the right vibe, I probably wouldn't accept you into my association because I'm a little bit old school. They start with a letter, then we have a phone call, and then I have them fly out to meet me.
Wow.
There's got to be hoops.
It's very formal.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Yep.
not just anyone. And with that, I've been able to just have a nice eclectic crew of great martial artists. Some do multiple arts, some just do jujitsu, and most who do multiple arts have done other arts. And yeah, I feel very happy and secure with all of them representing me, flying the flag. I'm just trying to have my lineage be something really high quality and beautiful so that people can reference it, in the future. It doesn't need to be that big. For me, it's more about quality and legacy and kind of reflecting back on the art. The art has given me so much. I want to give back to the art. And, I wouldn't have gone on that on these trips. I wouldn't, there's so many, I wouldn't have the confidence I have without the art. I wouldn't have, shoot, 9 out of 10 friends I have are from jujitsu, right? I owe it a
Yeah.
lot.
It's amazing, Roy. Like martial arts really changes lives. I promoted one of my students. I've only promoted two female students to blue belt, and I promoted one last year. This student of mine is a sexual assault survivor, and before she came in to train with me, she was so apprehensive and timid. She was worried about coming into the academy, but she must have been driving around the complex for about an hour, and she mustered up a bit of courage. She came in there. She obviously reflected on her past trauma, and I pulled her to the side and said, I was reassuring her, and we take your time, no rush, and it just changed her life. And 6+ years later, it was just such a breath of fresh air to promote her to blue belt. And I'm the same too, Roy. Like, I don't give away belts that easy unless they really deserve it, and she really did. But it just
Mm.
changes lives. And does that ever resonate with you, Roy? With your students and the academy that you built and the lives that you've changed? Like, does that ever hit home for you?
Oh, it does at different times. At different
Yep.
times, it definitely hits. Sometimes it hits hard. I see like some brilliant demonstration of like a student of a student, and it's like, oh my God, this is my lineage. And it works in reverse as well. When I went to the Kodokan, I was like teary. I couldn't believe I was in the main training hall, the Kodokan, all these years later, in front of Jigoro Kano's chair and table that he used to watch classes from.
Wow.
And I thought, holy smokes, my whole life is from his lineage. I started with judo. I still am, I have judo in my heart. And I wouldn't be able to do what I do without the influence of what he created through Kodokan Judo. And it was just full circle. So, like, whether I see someone doing really well in a tournament or getting some amazing submission, or, I am the student and reflect on where all of this knowledge came from. I mean, it does hit me. And to your point about I remember my first female blue belt, and Karen, and she went to the FBI shortly after she got her blue belt, and
Wow.
I was really proud of her. She was not she was not afraid. She was a tough girl, and it's you really see how good your technique is in your female students, and the environment that you create. You have to create the right environment because they are gold, and you kind of nurture them till they have enough skills so that they can hang.
Yep.
And then once they can hang, you have like, and then she starts to learn some like how to deal with real pressure and be tough and like suffer with it and avoid the strength. She learns a lesson 2 times. Okay, now she has a new path. And then that girl is the beacon for other females. If you have one girl on the mat, it's so easy to attract, 5 or 6.
Yep. Yeah.
So
It's
well done with that. I mean, it's a thing. That's definitely a milestone in an instructor's life.
Oh, thank you so much, Roy. Coming from you, that's very kind. Yeah. Roy, I had the privilege and honor of having Richard Norton on my podcast. So Richard Norton is a famous martial artist, movie star, stunt person, who's worked with Jackie Chan. He's been on a lot of movies. He's worked with Margot Robbie, Will Smith on the Suicide Squad. A very well-known martial artist here in Australia. He was also, I think, a 6th-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu under Higan Machado. Unfortunately, he passed away a few months ago, but it was just such an honor chatting with him. And he always left an impression on me, Roy. He gave me some of the best advice I've ever had. He said to me, never stop being a student. Always learn, always empty your cup. And I felt like that when I got my jiu-jitsu black belt. I literally just had to empty my cup again and start all over again. But what does never stop being a student mean to you, Roy?
Oh, well, it's fantastic advice. And to me, never stop being a student means you stay young mentally, neuroplasticity, humility, recognize, it helps you redefine who you are on what you know, what you don't know. You don't know it all. And there are certain aspects of my own jujitsu game. I have a pretty well-rounded jujitsu game, and I take a certain amount of, satisfaction in that. And yet there are areas now, like, people can navigate around the leg so well and so nimbly, and it's like a game within a game, with heel hook entries and all of the saddle positions and the immobilizations with two legs. It's amazing. And at a certain point, you say, "Oh man, I really don't know that. I don't know that. I'm not that good at that." And it's a relief. It's a relief to be able to say, I had a great martial artist who said, you should enjoy saying you don't know. And I was like,
Yes.
what? He's like, oh yeah, no, it's good. He's like, well, because it makes people secure in what you do know. They really they trust. You're like, no, I'm not that familiar with that. I'm not, whatever. And that level of like, that's what people are drawn to as well. People that are honest and can reflect on, that are just that honesty. Sometimes that takes the form of vulnerability. Sometimes it's, being like a good fight commentator where you're calling it evenly for both sides. It's like your powers of observation, how well they square with, our shared reality. That I think that's extremely important to not go astray with that. I was reading a Billy Joel. I'm a big Billy Joel fan, and he said that a lot of guys in their 50s, they just say, "I know it all," and they basically like they just stop, and they don't want to have anyone new in their life that would introduce different ideas. They don't want to be challenged on those ideas, and that stuck. I turned 50. I'm 50 now,
You
and
don't look 50, Roy.
thanks, brother. I'm fighting. I started fighting it. But like being able to just be honest that you don't know things, and it may sound kind of childish, but I got a couple years ago. I got a PlayStation. I started playing a game called Ghost of Tsushima, which is
Ah,
like the
yes.
samurai fantasy game.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
beautiful. It's art. It's art. That game is incredible, and I sucked. I sucked playing. I didn't understand
Yeah.
the controller. I didn't have any reference. I played Nintendo when I was, in junior high school, but it's good form. I had to learn. I had to go through. I had to be a white belt, and I think it was good for my brain. I think it was. It's a you know. The world of video games is also so good. They're interactive movies these days.
Yeah.
I really feel like you're never too late to learn it's never too late to learn something new. And, I think that's important, as a martial
Yeah.
artist and just as a person.
Oh, 100%, Roy. And speaking of evolution, you were talking about video games and how we've come such a long way. I can remember growing up with Sega Mega Drive, Nintendo. This is before Blu-ray and DVDs and the old school VCR and evolution. But look at martial arts and how fast and how much it's boomed in the last 20 years. What do you think of that, especially with the rise of the leg lock game and John Danaher and some of the intricate moves? Like, what do you think of the evolution of martial arts and how fast it's actually just progressed in such a short amount of time?
Well, I think, it is impressive and wonderful that it's exploded in popularity and in terms of technical intricacies. Like, if you look at the dynamic sphere of martial arts, a lot of techniques were based at, okay, we got an entry at, 90 degrees, 45 degrees, and a lot of basic techniques work on 45 degrees, 90 degrees. And now we're doing like 73.8 degrees. Oh, there's a cool entry there. Oh, there's another one at 19.6 degrees. We can go in. It's good. Those unguarded gates are more, they're more exposed because people have more time to devote to really going deep into a position. And as you know, if you can really own a position, you can beat people that are, better than you are in other positions. And and that's a very important part of like finding security and technical dominance, just being really good at hopefully a couple, but like deep knowledge in at least one area. I think it's amazing. However, there is sometimes the 90 degrees and the 45 degrees and the 180 degrees, it gets neglected. Some of the basic angles, some of the basic techniques get neglected. The basic trips from standing, some of the basic takedowns that you can do, because guys can just Imanari roll into, a saddle position, and then they have immobilized two legs. And so they can go for the most powerful technique immediately, and they shortcut everything else, which in a way is the path of efficiency,
Yep.
but only for a specific context, only for the padded, competitive submission grappling context. You are losing a degree of kind of like real world effectiveness. I am not saying those techniques don't work, but when you go back to how you can be dominated in your clothing, if you're a good no-gi grappler, a lot of guys don't want to even get into gi because they know how they can be slowed down. But just on the street, someone could grab your jacket and do an osotogari on you. I mean, there's a lot of judo throws where they grab you and you don't know what happened. You're on your back.
Yeah, that's so
And you
true.
can be manipulated by your clothing very easily. You can be restrained. There's a lot that can happen. So just like that meat and potatoes jujitsu of like a simple leg trip to just dominating somebody from the mount, or even Kesagatame. I mean, that is a really practical position and compassionate. And it's really underutilized in modern jujitsu.
Yeah, Kesugatami is a phenomenal position. And you just mentioned before, Roy, with regards to the gi, I think sometimes the gi gets a bad press. You have one side of the group saying the gi is great, the other side they're not a fan, and how well it transfers to self-defense. I'm going to send you a video, Roy, of some of the different techniques I've been playing around with hoodie jumpers and jackets. Because I think the gi can be modified for street self-defense. Like a lot of the chokes, especially with, your Ezekiel choke, you can do, and like if you look at a hoodie jumper, right? That thing is like a hangman's noose. I think it's even worse being strangled than in a gi
Mm.
because it just acts like a hangman's noose. And we would actually pressure test. So I was teaching out. So I'm in Brisbane, Roy, so which is just a little bit down from the Gold Coast, but Ipswich was a little bit further out. I was teaching up there, and we had a lot of students that came from domestic violence, sexual assault. We had a lot of law enforcement, correctional officers come through, and we would always try and tailor jujitsu for self-defense. And a couple of nights of the week, I'd get the guys in winter to bring in an old jumper, hoodie jumper, and jacket, and we'd wrestle. We'd roll in streetwear, and yeah, I think it's incredibly effective. But have you ever dived into a little bit of that, Roy? Have you played around with different clothing materials and tried different chokes and strangulations? And I mean, that hoodie jumper, it's very effective.
Yeah, I personally haven't, but I do know that it can be. You can modify it. Yeah, you ruined the shirt, but whatever. Um, and when it comes to those, I really respect the work that Burton Richardson has done in this realm.
Yes, yes.
He has a very clear view of the spectrum of combat, and a lot of things that pass as self-defense are, they're options, but and at some point I would like to go and do a little, just like a few days of training where he can just kind of open my eyes to um, just some of the realities of dealing with a weapon or dealing with, whatever in a jujitsu context. The idea that he has of, no, you want to give your back if someone has a knife because you can
Yep,
extend with your arms
yep.
and you can keep that knife, away from you, facing out, if you actually turn with them. So I mean, just counterintuitive things like that. I think that's good and important in this kind of modern sport, submission oriented grappling scene that we have today. I also think that, people are much easier to off balance in real life than you might think. You could go for a hoodie strangle or just a t-shirt thing, and whether their hands come up or you just use that to off balance them, do a little foot sweep. All you got to do is it doesn't have to be a perfect sweep, just a prop, and
Yeah.
just block them. And there people have terrible balance, like non trained individuals. It's bad. So in a way, I think all of that stuff is good. A kind of, yeah, we're keeping it real, just a taste of the street. And I think having that, and whatever your like there I love jujitsu because we can have so many different approaches. It's cool. The submission grappling, let's go ADCC style. That's cool. The MMA oriented grappling, the gi grappling, whatever. The Valente brothers and the Helio Gracie self defense techniques. So many different expressions, and you can be proud of all of them, even if you're not like you're not drawn towards a particular flavor. But that's fine.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, Roy. Um, I feel that jujitsu and martial arts has very much gone the competition route. It's amazing. It's phenomenal to watch. Um, but it has some nuances to it. I don't think you would probably do, as you mentioned, an Imanari roll into a heel hook in a street fight. You would probably do something a little bit more basic. But do you think that also there is a part of martial arts the way it is today? It's phenomenal, but it is missing a little bit of the self defense aspects of it.
I think it's missing a lot more
Yeah,
than the self defense aspects. Nick Gregoriadis and I, we were debriefing after that Kodokan Judo lesson, and he was like, you know, I mentioned he was trying to put it into words, and we came up with basically the lesson that we received, which gave us history, it gave us principles. There were some principles that he explained about movement that I didn't know. For just about pushing off the ground, moving your body effortlessly through body weight, and then having your feet keep up, how to walk, shizentai, natural posture. There were some there were some really beautiful principles, and you can't just teach principles because they have to be anchored to techniques. But it was such a well-rounded lesson that made me see. I learned about judo and jujitsu, from this lesson, and it was geared toward beginners. Um, but it highlighted some deficiencies that we have in modern day jujitsu. There's no moral education, and I don't want to be worshiping people. I mean, I have a picture of Helio Gracie in the old academy, and of course, respect to all the Gracies and the lineages. I mean, Kano, everyone. I honor the people that brought me this knowledge. But I just am feeling like there's a little bit of soul that's missing from the modern, where it's just sweating, it's just getting as jacked as you can, it's just about generating the leverage. It's less about the craftsmanship,
I agree. Yeah.
of having a personal game. That's I've been working on my game for a long time. It's a little art project, you know. And this doesn't have to be for other people to watch. It's not to get likes on Instagram. It doesn't have to be that way. It can be your own personal craft, your own personal development, your own personal perfectionism in something that nobody sees, but you apply that to other areas of your life too.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely, Roy. Roy, what has martial arts taught you, not just on the mat, but how has it helped you in life?
Well, it taught me how to be aggressive and to go for what you want. I was very I'm still polite, but I feel when I was younger, like I was a little shy. And I think that there's nothing wrong with being shy and there's nothing wrong with being, but you need to assert yourself sometimes and go for what you want. Fortune favors the bold, when you watch martial arts, when you watch tournaments, it's so different than how you think it'll be in your mind, whether you're involved or you're just watching. You note when you see people fighting, the aggressive person does better unless there's a really, really, really high level of skill discrepancy, and then the person could just be defensive and kind of counter. But being aggressive without being mean. Mean is also that helps too in real fighting, but just being able to assert your will. That was difficult for me to go from blue to purple because I didn't want to be mean. I wanted to just have perfect technique and win with perfect technique. And my instructor was like, Roy, you got to turn it up. You're leagues beyond these guys. Don't let them give you a hard time. And then I walked back in the room and I was like, oh, my teacher told me he gave me permission to be aggressive, not in an emotional way, in a clinical way. And that unlocked something and that taught me how to be aggressive in life, how to ask for what you want. Most of the time people are happy to make it happen. They're happy to fulfill what you want. There's a joy in that too. So being able to go for things, to take risk. I've taken risk in tournaments and sometimes they paid off. Sometimes they don't. I've taken risks in life. Sometimes they pay off. Sometimes they don't. Most of the time, it's not a wild thing. It's calculated, but there's a risk analysis that you do unconsciously. And we're always doing that. And it really makes you weigh things in your life, because at these days, I'm playing the percentages. I sometimes would rather, if I'm doing a black belt demo and I'm called up, they're really warm. I just got up. I don't really want to do a fast takedown. I want to warm up for a minute. You know, I'll pull guard because chances are I could just sweep them and then end up on top with very little risk of a
Mm.
clash. Right. So, I mean, I'm playing those percentages. I'm weighing that stuff in my mind. And you can do it with whatever. You can do it with stocks, you can do it with, investing, you can do it with relationships, whatever. The risk analysis is something that jujitsu definitely teaches you.
Yeah. One thing I found that's hard, Roy, is it's just a part of life is we get older and you're not going to be like you were in your 20s. You know, some of the moves that you once used to do effortlessly might feel a little bit of wear and tear on the body. But how has your jujitsu game changed over the years, especially moving on in later stages of life?
Oh, it's completely, I wouldn't say it's completely different, but it is uh evolving in kind of a predictable pattern where, when you're 16, you don't need to warm up. You can just do it. And like, I had a good Uchimata, I had long leg. I could like really bend down really, really far. And now I need to be really warmed up if I'm gonna, I won't even try like for like a crazy big Uchimata, unless and it's got to be just right. I'm not into taking big risks. When I was younger, I didn't need to warm up. I couldn't understand why these people were warming up. I was like, seems like formality. These days, I will not roll without a warm up.
Yes. Yep.
That has risen on the priority list significantly. So,
Yeah.
that I also attribute, I'm able to stay fairly symmetrical and fairly well balanced because I started doing Ashtanga yoga when I was 35.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's been
Interesting.
15 years of still not being able to do the primary series in total, but just being able to integrate that. There were years where I was more into it and I would go to class and, it's like a 90-minute class. It's very extensive. But I've just done kind of the opening standing series on my own for years. And I do it when I'm on the road. It gets me before I sometimes, before I have something to do, I'll do it because it makes me feel, it allows me to do a diagnostic on my body where I'm
Yeah.
like, ooh, I'm really tight on my left side today. I must have slept weird last night, you know, and you're able to kind of loosen everything and get it symmetrical and even. The Dr. Mark Chang, very well-known kind of healer and kettlebell expert in Los Angeles, he's paid very well by sports teams to fix their star athletes when they get injured. And most of it revolves around getting their chassis squared, getting their hips and shoulders in line because most people are twisted in some way and they can't kind of untwist out. So, and that's kind of the basis of foundation training, if you've ever heard of that, where it's like people get twisted, and these are back exercises that the Rutolo brothers are really into, and it's a kind of a mix between yoga and physical therapy. So, being able to be aware of those modalities. A lot of Japanese martial arts have a healing system embedded in them,
Yep.
and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's like an unspoken part of the art. If you really are in the lifestyle, dude, you probably need a chiropractor, you need a massage therapist, you probably need medical care every once in a while because of tweaks. You really should get a yoga teacher. You need like all these different healing modalities because what we do is not normal, but we get an abnormal response. We demand more, we get more.
Yeah, Roy, we had a 80-year-old last year just get awarded his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, and he's 80 years of age. It's a phenomenal feat. And I always have people say, I might be too old to start BJJ. Um, what would some advice be for people that are unsure about jiu-jitsu, especially in their older ages?
Anything's possible in the right environment. And very often, all you need is the right teacher. The right teacher can creates the right kind of environment, holds space for you to go in, learn your body, explore, work with other people in a safe manner. Um, and you can do it. You don't have to do everything in the class. If there's a certain warm up that exercise that you can't do, you can skip that. Most people are understanding, they're accommodating. That I feel like people may go to one or two jujitsu schools, and it's like it depends on where you are. If you're a young teacher, of course you want to be tough, you want to compete, you want your guys to compete, you want to be known as like the hard, tough school. And then later, as you mature, you realize, man, these people can't pay very well. There's always some drama. Then you start getting into working with executives and more people that are stable and professional. And you realize that, oh man, it's actually more rewarding, less drama. And right. And so as people age, they appreciate the benefits of jujitsu, the rejuvenating benefits of jujitsu more and more. And so for people that are, 40 plus, you certainly can do jujitsu. If you're 50 plus, you absolutely can, but you need to find the right teacher. And it might take going to a couple of different places, talking to people, watch a class, don't even participate, watch a class, check the vibe. Are there other people your age on the mat? Are they respected? Are they given a chance to develop their skills so that they can hang and do randori and the fun sparring that's so incredible that we all get a rush from?
Mm, yes, yeah. You did a seminar with John Danaher, Roy. What was that like? I've never had the chance to do a seminar with John Danaher. He's been over here to Australia a few times, but he's a pretty remarkable individual in his teaching philosophies and his mindset. But how did you find the seminar?
Well, I just to be clear, I didn't do a seminar with him. I went and trained for 2.5 weeks
Oh,
with him
okay.
in Texas. So
Yep.
that was good. And not with the pro team. I just did the regular classes. And it was great to learn under him and from him. There were many things that I picked up. Uh, some were technical and some were not about the technique. For example, his classes were really controlled. No one got hurt. I never even heard a yelp from somebody like, there was no fear in the room because everyone was there to learn from him. And there was an attentiveness. They were hungry to know. There was a diligence in the room, and they went for it. And no one got hurt the 2.5 weeks I was there, and I didn't get hurt either, which I was really grateful for. And I rolled with a lot of different guys. Like, and I tapped a lot too. And no one ever cranked it like crazy or I gotta show you. It was so he was able to control the room, control the attitude in the room. Um, and because guys are always coming in there, although it was very respectful, but I have heard that guys come in with like they're trying to impress him, so they do crazy stuff and they tell crazy stories, and he's seen it all. He's not interested in that. He just wants to run a clean class. Um, and everything I loved, you know what I was most impressed by? The breadth of his technical repertoire. It's so much more than leg locks and a back system. He was able to touch on just so many things. I hit a foot sweep on a female black belt. We were a really great training partner. Um, and maybe I think he may have seen it. And then the next day he taught a whole lesson on foot sweeps in ways that I had never even thought of and really cool. He worked with it was like he's so deep.
Mm.
He's deep and he's not braggadocious. He's just trying to convey the information in the most efficient way possible. I loved his in-person, like in-class instruction. It was detailed. The classes it was deep. Every mechanic was optimized, and it was just a pleasure. And and sitting next to him, like we would talk occasionally, and I just felt like he was like, it's like, how bright is your light? And he just felt like, yeah, I'm beaming, but it felt like he was because his mind is never off jujitsu. You know, I feel like I need a little bit more. I just have I'm kind of like jujitsu's for fun. Yeah, I teach it. I'm still learning all that, but I don't have the levels. I don't have the problems at the highest levels like he does, where he's
Yeah.
trying to address these dilemmas and strategies for his guys. So his mind is like so deeply in it. I've kind of like gone back a little, see it a little more. Oh, you know, I kind of keep it more recreational.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and so just learning from him, it was wonderful. And he was very, very kind, and he has a very keen eye when he watches the room. If you do something well, he will note it.
Mm.
You know, it's
Yeah.
it's good. And it's whatever his current physical struggles. We have had the mind of John Danaher, and and I'm so glad he's had the success that he has. He's well deserving of it. And he reminds me in many ways of Mr. Harris. Mr. Harris is not as well known as John, but like similar level, like they started around the same time, similar levels of depth with when you're addressing a technique or a question, or it's just their evolution of their understanding of jujitsu. Mine has gone through many permutations, from like the jujitsu is basically like an arm lock, a choke, a triangle, and kimura, or something like that. That's how I thought of it technically. Then after a while, it's like, oh no, it's a system of movement. Then it's like, oh, we're eliminating movement options. Then it turns into, but it just evolves into different things. I don't know where they are with their understanding, but it's just evolved. So I'm always inspired, whether I spend time with Mr. Harris or John Danaher. It's like, wow, there's more to go.
Yeah.
Lot-
Yeah. Roy, when I received my jujitsu black belt, it was an amazing. It took me an awfully long time, but I realized something once I got my jiu-jitsu black belt, the focus became less about me and more about how I could help my students. What's some advice that you could give to me, Roy, better being able to teach my students to keep them engaged, but you know, just just really trying to sort of get them to stick with it because yeah,
Mhm.
the journey is long, it's arduous, there's ups and downs, there's plateaus that you hit. It can be very, very frustrating, but as a coach, I really want to show compassion and empathy and understanding for my students. But what advice would you give me to sort of better coach my students and help them stick at it for the long haul?
Wonderful question. And congratulations on having that focus shift from developing your own game and kind of proving to yourself, no, I'm a black belt. I am lethal. I have skill. I need to be respected. You need to do that for you. Then you have to teach for them. Right. And most people, when they start teaching, they're actually not teaching for their students. They're teaching uh, kind of for themselves. Sometimes there's a little ego. They're trying to show off. They talk too much because they want to show how much they know. You want to avoid all of that. You want to just think, how can I convey this information to them? Speak plainly. Sometimes words get in the way. I'm a big believer in, you can lead them through the technique and explain it, but the kind of the Japanese way is you show the technique and then you explain it roughly, kind of give them the shape of the technique, boom, boom, boom. Then when they start having problems, now they're receptive for details and you pull them back. Okay, let's go over this. I noticed a few people were doing that. You need to pay attention, get your elbow on the inside, whatever. So I think that is important. Teach for them, not for you, but, and you already have that. I would also recommend giving kind of individualized game plans for people. And these can be very, very simple. But for some people with their body type, that they're just not going to be, they're going to gravitate towards a certain game. Oh, for example, with females, especially small ones, I'm like, okay, you're going to go for the arm lock and you're going to get stacked. You need to know how to spin out so you don't get stacked. So I teach them like the circle of the arm lock. From here you can sweep them. They stack you on your neck, you got to spin out underneath. That is or the arm drag. You need to hold on to them here, and then when the time is right, you need to hit it because that's how you're not going to be able to sweep this person. You need to go around them if you can't go underneath them and lift them. So giving into, or even a big guy, you're like, okay, this is what you need to do. You need to be able to put your hand on the knee. You need to slide past. You need to make sure that your knee is blocking their hip. And then you attack that far arm, teach them a big man game, but occasionally to get them, because they're overwhelmed, you need to give them that. Here's your game plan. Sometimes if I do like a roll with a beginner, I just coach them the whole time. Okay, this is
Yeah.
what you do. Put your hand deep in my collar. No deeper than that. Okay. Okay. That's good. Now you're halfway to a choke. All right. Now I'm going to block your arm from choking me. Okay. Now you can grab my elbow. Sets up for a scissor sweep. Okay. Go for that scissor sweep. Boom. Now you're on top. Just guiding them through that. Okay. Let's do that again. Now you have a game plan. Back to the hand deep. Right. Now I block. Now you go back. And they're like, I can do it again. Yes. You want to do it again. Right. So just opening that door for them so they can have kind of a game plan, very basic, can really open them up into having more security during sparring.
Beautifully said, Roy. No, thank you so much, Roy. It's been an honor sitting down with you. Um, And I hope that one day we might see you out here in Australia doing a few seminars. You'd have a fantastic time over here. Obviously, you've been to a lot of countries. I think you've been to Russia and you were in the UK and all sorts of amazing places. And your YouTube channel, it's phenomenal. I've been subscribed to your YouTube channel for, oh, probably over 10 plus years, and I always suggest people should watch it because the cinematography And when I watched you do your fourth degree jiu-jitsu grading, it was just beautiful. It was eloquent, elegant. Yeah, it's just amazing. It's just such a you bring a certain style to cinematography in jiu-jitsu, which is really cool. It's impressive. But yeah, an honor to sit down with you, Roy.
Oh my God, James, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. And thanks for sharing this time. I love talking about jujitsu, and hopefully your listeners were able to get something from that.
No, thank you so much, Roy. And where can people find you, Roy? Are you a little bit on the social media or not that much? Or have you got any up and coming seminars happening for the rest of the year?
Yeah, I have a couple of things cooking. You can always go to roydean.com. That's my main page. I have a subscription, of course, on YouTube. Just look for me, Roy Dean. I have a subscription channel as well, that you can easily access. It has all of my instructionals, and I'm continuing to doing. I just got back from a major trip, kind of Europe tour, and I'm going to be teaching at something called the Old Grappler Summit
Oh,
in San
wow.
Diego at the end of October. Rick Ellis is putting that on, one of my black belts, Art of
Yep.
Skill. So he's putting that on. It's a beautiful location. Clark Gracie, myself, Rick, and Miles Lucas will be teaching, sharing some techniques. And then 2 weeks later, I'm going to be in Costa Rica. If anyone would love to come down, it's a great cause. Hero
Wow.
Academy. They bring down instructors, um, and then anyone who comes to the camp, they split the proceeds to support the children. Half go to the instructor, half goes to support the local children. So they don't have to pay for any tuition or uniforms or anything. So Ron Jarman is doing some seriously good work down in Costa Rica, and it's a cause I love.
That's amazing, Roy. Nah, fantastic. Roy, thank you again. And all the best for the rest of the year. And yeah, no, hopefully we'll see you in Australia doing some seminars.
I look forward to it. Okay, thank you so much.